67. Then she'd go maybe once a week to a teacher to see if it's right. And the teacher tell her it's right. And that's where she done so. She got past 8th grade, and when she passed 8th grade, that's far as we could go. Was 8th grade, there was no further going. But you know, my husband, when he died, it was so funny, and I felt lots of times how silly people raised their children. They never sit down and talk to them and try to be real close to them. You talk to them and always talk. And when he whooped one of us, if we had done something we shouldn't do, then he whooped us. Why, he got through whooping my women on and cried to us. And maybe he'd be a week, maybe 2 weeks, before he talked to us about our work and such as that. Then he'd be sitting around and say, come here. Of course, over on his lap and up his, he said, now I didn't whoop you because I didn't love you. He said, I love you. I whooped you because I love you. I want you to be raised up and be somebody when you get big and learn to treat other people like they ought to be. And that hurt worse than whooping. I'd rather give me whooping than that. The people don't do that anymore.
That's right. What did Claremore look like when you first moved here?
Oh, it was just a common little small town. Wasn't very much to it. Montgomery Ward, now you see, Montgomery Ward was the biggest store there was there. Well, it wasn't as big as the store places. Of course, they tore it away. But it didn't have as much stuff in it. But you know what Wilson's Hardware is?
No, ma'am.
Well, Wilson's Hardware's been there, I guess Wilson's Hardware's been there maybe 100 years. I know it.
Is it downtown?
Huh?
Downtown?
Yeah, it's right on the street there. But one of his, the old man Wilson, when we first come here, that owned the store, he was getting old and he finally died. And then one of his boys taken it over, and he must have been in his 40s, and he finally died. Well, one of the younger boys taken it over, and he got so old he couldn't run it, so his daughter runs it now. No, his wasn't. And I forgot, I have read several times how long Wilson's Hardware, I guess Wilson's Hardware must have been about the first store was put in there. No, they tell me that the Indians, this was at Claremore, belonged to the Cherokee Indians. Well, there's another tribe come in here and run them away. And they left here and was gone for, they said, 8 or 10 years, and they come back and run these others out and take it over. So that's the reason, you see, they got the Indian hospitals little thing here now on account of the Indians come back here and take it over.
How big was Claremore when you moved here?
When we first come here, well, it wasn't very big. There wasn't but 2 or 3 stores. No, it was Claremore.
Were the streets paved?
Huh?
Were the streets in Claremore paved?
Some of them was and some of them wasn't, no. Some of them was and some of them wasn't.
Ever meet Will Rogers?
Oh, I could have, but I never did go out there. Now, my daughter, when she was young, she went time or 2 and see him, but I never did go to see him. No, I've always wished to have. Now, there's a woman that I live by, and I live in town, and she had a book of the Indians that they was running, a Cherokee Indian was running out of here. And they was first from the chair, and the first had a store here. They run them out, and there's another tribe come in. Well, they stayed gone, she said, 7 or 8 years. And they come back and run them out and take it over. And she had a book on them tombs. She did tombs, they made them themselves. Well, they stopped there. They won't be, they'd be tall and Plow would be made out there anymore. But there's old-time Indians' graves in it.
What about the Depression, 1930s?
Huh?
What about the Depression of the 1930s? How'd that affect you and your family?
Well, it was bad, all right. We had, of course, we still always raised, well, we always have all of our lives raised by what we eat. But we had time, I know, we got where we couldn't get no bread. And we had to eat cornbread. Well, my husband, we had a big bunch of cows, milk cows, and sold milk all the time. We had 114 head of hogs.
114?
114 head of hogs. And we got acquainted with a fella in Tulsa that worked for to make rainbow light bread in Tulsa. And he got in with them, and he got where he just give $5 for a truckload of light bread. $5 for a truckload. Well, my husband, he had to haul it. Well, everybody got a bread bag for bread. Well, I had to line this truck with pasteboard boxes where people couldn't see it. They had stopped here and taken all the bread away from us. And that's what we fed our cows and hogs. You know, we could take this bread and put it in the barrel, pour water over it, mix it up, and put bran in with it. Made slop, fed our hogs and sold our hogs. And we just take the dry bread and tear it up and feed our cows and milk them and sold our milk.
But you made it through the Depression pretty good?
Did
you make it through the Depression pretty good?
No, not too good, but we made it.
Yeah.
All right, we made it better than lots of other people. Lots of other people like to starve to death. But I don't know, my husband always was, up till he died, a service town for garden stuff to raise what we eat. No, now I have got enough stuff put away that I could live another year easy. But if people get hungry, like I told them, I said one day someone asked me how come it said I live. I said, well, one thing, I try to live right, try to be right with the other people. And I said, I don't bother nobody. And I said, if somebody comes along hungry, I said, I give them something to eat. I remember during World War I, oh, I tell you, Germans come through, and I never was, it hurt me. It hurt me so bad. We had plenty of beds and everything. One evening, this couple of Germans come by, and they wanted something to eat. It's cold, up there, and he's froze up. My daddy brought him in the house, and did the chairs and let him get good and warm. And he told me to go to the kitchen and get him something to eat. So I went and fixed him something to eat, and I told him table and his feet, and he don't tell him when he had anything to eat. Well, when it come bedtime, I noticed just before bedtime, he said to me, he said, daughter, and I always called my daughter, said, I'll fix the beds. And I could imagine he never done that before. So we had one room off to itself, we had 2 beds in. Well, he went to the barn. I noticed he went to the barn. I thought, well, what in the world are you going to the barn for? Yeah, we had a couple of wagons at the barn. He went and got them. But he'd taken all the clothes I had on the bed off and put them in another room. And he put these wagon sheets on that bed. And that's where he put them to sleep. He said he couldn't turn them down.
You said they were Germans?
Yeah.
What were they doing in Claremore?
They was trying to keep what they didn't know. You see a German coming here. He was thrown in jail. One of our mainest neighbors was German, and he'd raised 3 or 4 boys and a girl or 2. And they threw him in jail, kept him in jail for 2 months.
Why?
And I don't know why. They just hated the Germans. They was hated. So he put me in there. Well, the next morning when I got up to get breakfast, Papa come in the kitchen and said, "Daughter," said, "don't bother the beds. I'll take care of the beds myself." I said, "Okay." So I wondered. I was so ashamed to think that he put on weight. And after before they left, I baked them up some bread, fixed them some meat, ham meat, fixed up big pork piece of groceries, and they left us a big snow off. Well, Papa, he went out and there was barn under 2 wash pots and filled them up with water. He just went, they would let me go in there, went there and get them wagons, set up one in one pot and one in the other. And he said, "I want to show you now." And I went in there and it was body lice, where they'd laid out, you know, and he didn't want to get them body lice, but he couldn't stand to think about, they asked to sleep in the barn. He said if he got them in the barn, but he had them the rest of the time. And he told him, "I don't allow nobody to sleep in my barn." And so that's how he done. And then when he got the wagon seats and in that hot boiling water, and then threw them on the clothesline, then he brought that hot water in and he scalded the walls and everything. We never did get no body lice.
Where were the Germans from, do you know?
Huh?
Where were they from, the Germans?
They was from across the water. They had got over here on ships somewhere, and they had traveled on foot, and they told about how many miles they'd come. It would have had clothes on like it said. It would have been nice looking men.
I mean, were they American citizens or were they
No,
German?
they was from Germany. They was hiding out. That's what there was lots of them here then. They was hiding out, you know, to keep them having to be in that war and keep them being killed. They was hiding out. No, they just camped everywhere, all along the creek banks and everywhere. Built fires for night, and ladies close to them get hot enough sleep they could. Bag what to eat. No, they were.
What was your neighbor's what was your neighbor's name that was thrown in jail?
They threw to jail.
The German?
His name was Tinnerman.
Tinnerman?
Old Grandpa Tinnerman. No, he'd been in there all his life, raised his family there. Of course, his boys never told nothing about being German. And the girls, none of them thought nothing about be just like we are now. We think nothing about the Indians anymore. We think nothing about the whites. So it's just the same one. Well, Papa always taught us kids that God made white people who was here. He made some of us black, some of us dark, some of us white. But we's all people. And we really shouldn't shout nobody. Well, that's the truth, but
That's right.
we used to be bad at that.
Yeah.
I was myself. I was bad about shoving people. But since I decided, well, I guess the Lord did make us all. He put us all there, and we should all be together talk. There wouldn't be so much of this meanness going on if we would learn to be around one another.
Well, I think we have a good interview. It's about your supper time, I think.
Well, I imagine it is.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Yeah.